Let's talk about race. You know, you can't see the money can't be eaten. It's where you are. When you believe the history that assassins write, is where you be. Once again. But I got some help for you. Check this out. Here's an escalator, world dominator, miseducator, boom, tune, walk to the devil's lair. This virus erases faces, contagious to all types of places. Gotta peel layers off, and it ain't gonna get done soft. Let's rap for taste. Before it's too late.
Hi, I'm Diane Wong, and I want to talk today about anti-Blackness. The reason I want to talk about anti-Blackness is that it resides pretty much in all of us to different degrees, but still we we harbor anti-Blackness at the same time that we're harboring a belief in white supremacy. So it's complicated, but that's who we are. We believe in both white supremacy, and we believe we're anti-Black. We believe that a lot of the problems that are coming up today in society, a lot of us believe that it is because of Black people. It's because of the Black vote. It's because of some phantom Antifa that is not an organization, but let's look at our beliefs. And so I'm asking you today, start to work and help you see that, and so that we can eliminate that. Because until we do that, we're not going to make the change in American society that we must make in order to continue to be a democracy, a sort of a democracy. And let's talk about anti-Blackness. Let's talk about race.
Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal court case that would be used to separate Black people from white people in regard to basic interaction, basic sharing of public services, basic sharing of any form of interaction or fraternization, really. Summer of 1919. So in this time period, you have a lot of veterans returning from World War I. You had Black soldiers that were putting their lives on the line and fighting in combat against the enemies of the United States of America that are returning to be brutalized and abused by the very same country that they had just devoted their lives to protecting. So you have lots of examples of Black communities and Black neighborhoods that were formed and were not only self-sufficient, but prospering. These places were truly brutalized in horrid acts of terrorism by white people. These are situations where you just have law enforcement turning a complete blind eye, or even in some cases assisting in the brutalization and the destruction of Black prosperity, or even Black existence in many cases. So a common connection and link to policing and in the United States of America, and especially in the Deep South, or direct links to slave patrols, which were, informal groups of law enforcement that were used to return escaped slaves to their plantations should they ever flee from their locations. You have lots of history of brutalization of Black people in the United States. And this is something that is perpetrated on many levels, both institutionally in regards to codified law. And now in this time period, we're often branching into how a specific level of physical cruelty and brutality is inflicted upon the Black citizenry by the white citizenry. Lynching, of course, being the ultimate example and symbol of this. You know, you would take a black individual and you would hang them by the neck until dead, and that's the bare minimum of what the technical definition of lynching is. It was often also associated with horrid and cruel acts of mutilation, and these are truly horrid and bloody, evil acts that were committed as quite literal acts of terrorism in order to cause enough fear and panic in order to lower and keep the Black Americans in their place.
Essentially, I want to talk about the centrality of slavery. That the slavery and the subsequent, almost 200 years of economic and social brutality, the effect it had on descendants and the descendants today. But it also, we have to look at it again. What did it do? The wind in the back, the economic wind in the back of white people, white enslavers, their descendants, their businesses, and the growth of their businesses after emancipation. We often hear from whites, and many of you have probably heard this, including immigrants who are white or white presenting immigrants, saying, we came here later, we didn't have anything to do with this. Well, to be honest, they entered a system already set up for them. Italians, Jews, Armenians, others Irish, who initially were not considered white. This is a little bit aside, but eventually came to be seen as white. They all eventually have benefited from this. And as some of you were here at our prior event, the land grants, the GI Bill, the free education, the Homestead Act, all of these programs serve to really propel whites and white society forward at all levels, not just the wealthy, but those who are not wealthy, who became wealthy. And as you may recall, Lane himself and Diane, each of them did very personal, very emotional and difficult presentations about how their own families were benefited or were hurt by this. Finally, I want to talk about economists, and I've been reading a lot about what they call the moral imperative of economists, that economics, the study of it, is not this neutral, as people like to think, this neutral science. Power and capital played a huge role, obviously a mainstay role in slavery, and it still plays a role in capitalism today. And essentially, Professor Derek Hamilton, who I don't quote him, but the idea that he brought up is that power and capital adjust to alter the rules and structures of transactions, meaning the markets, to privilege that very power and capital. So it reminds me of a time, let's say those of us here who run businesses, who work in businesses, imagine having a business where you largely have no labor costs. And due to the theft of early land as well from Native Americans, and also, by the way, the theft from Black farmers, we'll talk about that at some other stage of land. Imagine really running businesses without those costs. It's really something astounding to think of, and that's really what went on back in the day. So this is just more a reminder of how finance and economics are tied to the base of slavery, of the slavery era, the economic slavery era, and as well as to the reparations movement. Again, we are doing this in aid of understanding why reparations are fundamental to changing the society, and that, 100 million here from Netflix or 150 in scholarships from SoftBank, et cetera, the things we read that companies were doing after the George Floyd murder, those are choices those companies are making to move 1 or 2% of their wealth. That is not reparations to me, and frankly, it doesn't totally impress me at all. We'll talk about that near the end, and I'd like all of you to think about that as well. One of the points here is that U.S. slavery itself, the production, the entrepreneurs in slavery, they created a lot of the accounting and operational systems that companies use today. And I won't go into those details, but all of that information is available. And here's, for example, an annual record of a planter. You see, it says the planter's annual record of his Negroes. This is in 1850, and the value of the people at the time. We need to come to terms with the importance of this to really understand the magnitude of the theft and how whites, whether purposefully or not, continue to benefit fully from what was created.
Let's talk about race. Let's rap a taste.